My name is Jake, and at the age of 19 I realized I was in love with my cousin Trey. We grew up together in sunny California, but one night turned my life upside down. Secrets, passion, and the fight for myself. Can I find love where I didn't expect it? My story is a path to acceptance in a world that is not always ready to understand. My name's Jake, and I'm 19 years old, living in San Diego, a city of endless sun, crashing waves, and secrets I never thought I'd carry. Life here is pretty standard for a guy like me. I share a house with my parents and my little sister, Kate, who's always blasting pop music from her room. We've got a backyard where Dad grills burgers every weekend, and the beach is just a short walk away. It's the kind of place where everyone knows your name, whether you like it or not. But this summer, everything I thought I knew about myself started to unravel, all because of my cousin Trey. Trey's 24, fresh out of college in Los Angeles, and he rolled back into town for the summer like he owned the place. He's always been the cool one, tall, broad-shouldered, with a grin that could melt ice. Growing up, he was the older cousin I idolized but never really got close to. He'd be off with his buddies while I was stuck playing tag with Kate and her friends. This time, though, something felt different when he showed up at our door, duffel bag slung over his shoulder, his dark hair messy from the drive. "Hey Jake, you gonna help me out or just stand there?" he teased, tossing me a smirk as he stepped inside. That first week, he roped me into helping him throw a beach party for some of his old high school crew. The sun was dipping low, painting the sky orange and pink, and the air smelled like salt water and bonfire smoke. Music thumped from a portable speaker, and people were laughing, tossing a frisbee around. I was hauling a cooler full of drinks when Trey peeled off his shirt, revealing a chest tan from hours in the sun. He caught me staring and laughed. "Jake, dude, quit spacing out. Grab me a beer, will ya?" His voice snapped me out of it, but my heart was pounding in a way I couldn't explain. Later, as the party wound down, we ended up sitting on the sand, just the two of us, watching the waves roll in. The fire crackled nearby, casting shadows across his face. "You've grown up, man," he said, nudging me with his elbow. "Not the scrawny kid I used to dunk in the pool anymore." I forced a laugh, but inside I was a mess. The way he looked at me, casual, easy, like nothing had changed, only made it worse. I didn't know what this feeling was, but it was sharp and alive, cutting through me every time he was near. The next day, we were back at it, setting up chairs in the backyard for one of Dad's barbecues. Trey was joking around, flipping a spatula like he was some grill master. "Think you can keep up with me, Jake?" he called out, grinning. I rolled my eyes, but I couldn't shake the way my stomach flipped when he brushed past me to grab the tongs. That's when I knew this wasn't just admiration anymore. It was something deeper, something I wasn't ready to name. And as the summer stretched out ahead, I had no idea how much it would change me. The days after the beach party blurred together, each one pulling me deeper into this tangle of feelings I couldn't shake. San Diego's summer heat was relentless, and so was Trey. He was everywhere, sprawled on our couch playing video games, tossing a football in the yard, or dragging me along to grab tacos at the pier. Every laugh, every glance, felt like it was testing me. I'd catch myself staring at the way his t-shirt clung to his shoulders or how his voice dipped low when he was tired. "You're quiet today, Jake," he'd say, raising an eyebrow. "What's up with you?" I'd mumble something dumb about school stress, even though classes were months away. It wasn't like I hadn't noticed guys before. I'd had crushes, safe ones, fleeting ones, but this was different. Trey wasn't just some random dude. He was family, my cousin, the guy who'd once dared me to jump off the garage roof into a pile of leaves. That history made it worse, like a knot tightening in my chest. I started avoiding him, volunteering to mow the lawn or run errands for Mom, anything to keep my head clear. But Trey wasn't having it. "Come on, man, you're bailing on me?" he'd tease, tossing me a soda like nothing was wrong. He didn't know. How could he? Then came Friday night. Mom and Dad were out at some friend's anniversary dinner, and Kate was sleeping over at a friend's. The house was ours, just me and Trey, and the quiet felt heavy. He was sprawled on the living room floor, flipping through channels, while I sat stiffly on the couch, pretending to scroll my phone. "Dude, this movie's classic," he said, landing on some old action flick. "Sit down here, stop being weird." I slid onto the floor next to him, our shoulders inches apart, and every nerve in me was buzzing. Halfway through, his hand brushed mine, reaching for the remote. It wasn't a big deal, just a graze, but neither of us pulled away. The air shifted, thick with something unspoken. I glanced at him, and his eyes locked on mine, searching. "You okay?" he asked, softer this time. I nodded, throat dry. Then, like the world slowed down, he leaned in. His lips brushed mine, tentative, quick, like he wasn't sure he meant it. My heart slammed against my ribs, and for a second, I kissed him back, chasing the warmth of it. But then he jerked away, eyes wide. "Shit, Jake, I didn't mean to." He scrambled to his feet, running a hand through his hair. "You're my cousin. This is messed up." I just sat there, frozen, heat flooding my face. "Trey, wait." I started, but he shook his head. "Forget it. Just forget it happened." He grabbed his keys and bolted out the door, leaving me alone with the hum of the TV and a storm of guilt and want crashing through me. What the hell had we just done? The morning after Trey stormed out, I woke up to a silent house and a headache that wouldn't quit. His keys were gone, his shoes missing from the hall. He hadn't come back. I replayed that kiss in my head 100 times, the way it felt electric and wrong all at once. My stomach churned with shame, but underneath it, something else flickered, hope, maybe, or just stubborn longing. I couldn't face him, not yet, so I grabbed my skateboard and headed downtown. San Diego's streets were alive with tourists and the hum of summer, but I felt like a ghost drifting through it. I ended up at this little bookshop near the Gaslamp Quarter, a place I'd passed 1,000,000 times but never gone in. The bell jingled as I pushed the door open, and the smell of old paper hit me like a comfort I didn't know I needed. Behind the counter was a guy, 20 maybe, with messy blonde hair and a tattoo of a wave curling around his wrist. "Hey, you look lost," he said, grinning. "Need a recommendation?" I shrugged, fumbling for words. "Just looking." He nodded like he got it, and handed me a graphic novel. "Start with this. It's chill." His name was Aiden. We got talking, about comics, music, the way the ocean looked at night. He was easygoing, sharp, and when he laughed, it pulled me out of my head. Then he said it, casual as anything. "You into guys, right?" My face burned, and I stammered. What?" He smirked. "Relax, dude. I'm gay too. It's not a big deal." I stared at him, heart racing. I'd never said it out loud, not to anyone, but he made it sound so simple. "Yeah," I admitted, voice barely there. "I guess I am." Aiden became my lifeline. We'd hang out after his shifts, grabbing coffee, skating along the boardwalk. He told me about coming out at 17, how his mom cried but hugged him anyway. "You don't have to hide, Jake," he said one day, tossing me a fry across the table. "Not with me." For the first time, I felt seen, not judged. But Trey was still a shadow in my mind. He'd been dodging me since that night, short texts, excuses about being busy. I didn't push it. Then, a week later, I was with Aiden at the pier, laughing at some dumb joke, when I saw Trey. He was across the street, frozen, watching us. His jaw tightened, and before I could wave, he marched over. "Who's this?" he asked, voice low, eyes flicking to Aiden. "Just a friend," I said, but it sounded weak. Aiden raised an eyebrow but stayed quiet. Trey stepped closer, his breath uneven. "Jake, we need to talk." "Alone." My pulse spiked. "Okay," I muttered. Aiden squeezed my shoulder. "Text me later." Trey pulled me aside, near the water. "I'm freaking out, man," he said, voice cracking. "That night. I can't stop thinking about it. But I'm scared, my folks, your folks, everyone. They'd hate me." His eyes were raw, pleading. "I don't know what I am, Jake, but I know I don't want you with him." It hit me like a wave. He was jealous. And suddenly, I wasn't sure who I was more afraid of losing. Trey's words hung in the air like smoke I couldn't wave away. The pier was buzzing, kids shrieking, waves crashing, but all I heard was the tremor in his voice. "I don't want you with him." It wasn't a confession, not really, just a raw, messy truth spilling out. I stood there, sand sticking to my sneakers, torn between the guy I'd wanted for months and the one who'd made me feel safe. Trey, I started. You can't just. But he cut me off, stepping closer. Jake, I'm serious. I messed up, okay? I shouldn't have run. His eyes were dark, desperate, and my resolve cracked. The next few days were a blur of stolen glances and half-spoken things. Trey stopped dodging me. He'd linger after dinner, offer to help with dishes, his hand brushing mine like a question. I didn't pull away. Aiden noticed, though. You're distracted, he said over coffee one afternoon, his green eyes narrowing. It's him, isn't it? I couldn't lie, not to him. Yeah, I admitted. But I don't know what I'm doing. He sighed, setting his cup down. Figure it out, Jake. Just don't let him break you. 4th of July rolled around, and our house was chaos, relatives everywhere, flags flapping in the yard. Dad was manning the grill, Mom passing out lemonade, and Kate blasting her playlist. Trey and I kept our distance, playing it cool, but the tension was a live wire. After the fireworks, the crowd thinned out, and I found him in the garage, fiddling with an old bike. Hey, I said, shutting the door behind me. He looked up, and something shifted. No words, just him closing the gap, his hands on my face, kissing me like he'd been holding it in forever. It was fierce, hungry, and I melted into it, my fingers gripping his shirt. Then the door creaked open. What the hell? Dad's voice boomed, sharp as a gunshot. We sprang apart, but it was too late. His face was red, fists clenched. Trey, what are you doing with my son? I stammered. Dad, it's not. But he wasn't hearing me. Your family, Trey. This is sick. Trey tried to step forward. Uncle Mike, listen. Dad shoved him back, hard. Get out. Now. Mom rushed in, eyes wide, pulling Dad away as he yelled. Trey grabbed his jacket, avoiding my gaze. I'm sorry, Jake. He muttered, then bolted. I sank to the floor, the garage spinning. Mom knelt beside me, her voice soft. Jake, honey, talk to me. But I couldn't. Dad stormed off, and the silence was deafening. Hours later, my phone buzzed. Aiden. Heard from Kate. You okay? I wasn't, but I texted back. Can you come over? He showed up at dawn, sitting with me on the porch. Trey's gone, I said, voice hollow. Dad hates me. Aiden took my hand. He doesn't. He's scared. But you don't have to stay stuck here. Come with me, San Francisco. Fresh start. His words were a lifeline, but my heart was still in pieces. I had to choose, run with Aiden or face the wreckage Trey left behind. The days after the garage blow-up felt like wading through mud. Dad barely looked at me, his silence louder than any shouting match. Mom tried to bridge the gap, leaving plates of food outside my room, whispering, We'll figure this out, Jake. But I wasn't sure what this even was anymore. Trey was gone, his stuff cleared out, no texts, just a void where he'd been. I kept replaying his last words. I'm sorry. And the way Dad's face twisted with disgust. It gnawed at me, a mix of guilt and anger I couldn't shake. Aiden was my anchor. He'd show up with takeout or drag me to the beach, talking about anything but the mess I was in. San Francisco's waiting, he'd say, half smiling. No judgment, just us. It sounded like freedom, but I wasn't ready to run, not yet. I needed answers, closure, something. So one night, I cornered Dad in the living room. He was nursing a beer, staring at the TV like it held all the secrets. We need to talk, I said, voice steadier than I felt. He grunted, eyes still fixed on the screen. Dad, I'm gay. That's not changing. I need to know if you hate me for it. He finally looked at me, his face softening just a crack. Hate you? Jake, you're my kid. I was pissed, confused. Seeing you with Trey, it threw me. But I don't hate you. He rubbed his temples, sighing. I just want you safe, happy. Can't wrap my head around all this yet, but I'm trying. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. Mom hugged me later, tears in her eyes. We love you, always. For the first time in weeks, I breathed easier. A year passed. I stayed in San Diego, patching things up with Dad, leaning on Aiden. He'd become more than a friend. Late-night talks turned into dates, his hand in mine a quiet strength. I was finding myself, piece by piece. Then, one spring day, Trey showed up. He looked older, worn, standing on our porch with a hesitant nod. "Can we talk?" he asked. We sat in the backyard, the air thick with unsaid things. "I freaked out back then," he said, staring at the grass. "Didn't know who I was. I've been figuring it out, therapy time. I'm sorry I left you to deal with it alone." I nodded, feeling the ache but not the anger anymore. "I get it. But I'm not that guy waiting for you now. I've moved on." He smiled, small and sad. "Good. You deserve that." He left after that, a chapter closing. I didn't need him to define me. I had Aiden, my family's shaky but growing acceptance, and a life I was building on my terms. Aiden and I did go to San Francisco eventually, not to escape but to explore. Standing on the Golden Gate Bridge, wind in our hair, he kissed me, simple, sure. "This is it, huh?" he said. I laughed. "Yeah, this is it." Love wasn't the chaos Trey and I stumbled into. It was this, steady and free. I'd fallen, broken, and risen, and the lesson stuck: you don't let fear win. You choose yourself, and the right people stay.